Hello everyone, Grimm here. Now, before we get started on the journey that we are about to take involving these creepy encounters, please like and subscribe to the channel, leave a comment below, do all the usual thing that really helps the channel out. Now that I've given you time to do that, please welcome to the show one of my best friends in horror, Interscare Sleep. He is going to be performing the first story for tonight's video, and then I will continue from there. Just a couple of things to get out of the way before we get started though. There will be no end monologue at the end of the video tonight. It'll just be this monologue and then straight into the video, and then the video will run its course. Along with that, there will be small breaks between each story. Nothing too long, probably about 5 to 10 seconds at max, so just take a breather, have a chat, maybe take some time to write a comment. Well, now that I've got all that out of the way, everyone, please get yourself strapped in, put your head down to your pillow or couch, and let Grimm and his whispers help you get into sleep.
"23-year-old guy here. I live in a pretty safe neighborhood and usually always lock my doors. Last night, I apparently didn't. I was not too long after I had taken my dogs out for the last time and was turning off the TV and lights when one of my dogs started growling. Not too weird, since he sometimes does that when people walk by the house. He only does it to certain people, not everyone. I then heard the front door open and someone walk in. My dog then started barking. My other dog, who loves all people, came running from the other room to greet our guest. At the same time, I was reacting to what happened and went, "What the heck? Who are you?" Standing in the hall was a guy in his mid to late 20s. He was skinny and tall. Oh wait, I don't think I'm in the right place. He genuinely seemed confused. I replied with, "Heck no you aren't, please get out." He apologized and said that he was coming to hang out with a friend and must have accidentally went to the wrong place. I asked him what house he was looking for, and he said a number that was just a couple of numbers off from mine. He apologized again and left. He seemed nice and non-threatening, but I was still kind of spooked. This morning I was ready to laugh the whole thing off. I was planning on telling my neighbor, a couple in their 30s, what had happened. I don't know them all too well, but we have talked before. Luckily, I caught up with one of them when I was taking my dogs out. I didn't want to come off like I was mad or scared over what happened, so I casually said, "I'm sure he told you about it, but your friend paid me a surprise visit last night." My neighbor gave me this confused look and said, "What are you talking about?" "Your friend. He walked into my house last night thinking it was your place." My neighbor was quiet for a second and then said, "I don't want to alarm you, but I have no idea what you're talking about. We didn't have a friend over last night."
I'm young. I'm 30, so I'm kinda young, but I see this little girl at Walmart not long ago, running around in the toy aisles. She must have run past me about 4 or 5 times, and every time she did, a man would be right behind her, right on her tail. For some reason, I could feel that something was off. I stopped the little girl and I asked her if she was lost. She said yes. I pointed to the man behind her and I asked if this man was her daddy. With her being almost in tears, she looked at him and then slowly looked back at me and said, "No." I grabbed her by the hand and told her we were going to go up front to have them call for her mummy. As the man was in our aisle, I gripped her little hand a bit harder. Then we walked past him and went to the front of the store. While walking past the man, looking him straight in the eyes, he just kind of gave me this gross side smirk that till this day still makes hair stand up on my entire body. Had I not stopped that little girl and brought her to the front desk to find her mum, I'm genuinely scared that I know what would have happened to her. I'm a hunter. I like to hunt wild boar specifically. Though I have been deer hunting and have been known to get a turkey for Thanksgiving, I mostly hunt boar. For those of you who don't know, boar is a big problem in the United States. A sow can have 2 litters a year, and it's common for a litter to consist of 10 or more piglets. Given that piglets eat anything and everything, it's not hard to see why the Department of Fish and Wildlife makes it legal to hunt them with almost no restrictions. In my state, however, it is illegal to hunt most large mammals with a night or thermal vision scope, with the exception of boar and coyote. I had been saving for a year, mostly using my fun money. I have to admit, it's rather hard to explain to the wife that the scope that cost twice as much as the rifle that I was mounting it onto was worth it. But I did it. I took the rifle and the scope to the range and sighted it in. After that was done, I thought for a moment where I could go, and I knew of a place where there were loads of boar. It was just peppered with boar activity that I knew would be perfect for a night hunt. This location was easily accessible by my truck and had multiple places that I could set up in that overlooked large or larger areas to easily navigate in sort of a clearing. That night started uneventful, mostly just me tinkering with my new toy, cycling through the settings. I must admit, I was a little bit impatient. I had spotted multiple deer, but they were out of season, and like I mentioned earlier in this, my current setup wasn't legal for deer hunting. I moved to another spot that I had seen days earlier that wasn't much better than my first spot, but it gave me things to do, and I was able to see things from a different angle. I was able to look around at new things with my scope. After an hour or so of glassing the area, it dawned on me. This spot doesn't have much animal activity at all. No rabbits or owls. The deer that I'd seen were hundreds of yards from where I was. I found myself asking why this pocket of land was so dead at night, but lively in the day. I had set up my spot at around 10 p.m, and it was about 2 a.m. by the time I started to think about packing up, along with a little bit of an idea of setting up a target before I left and taking a couple of practice shots. Just as I'm getting ready to start complying with my idea, I hear a crunch from the direction that I just came from before. I panned my scope over and I saw the silhouette of a small bear pushing through the bushes. It's important to note that my scope isn't exactly night vision, it's a thermal scope, like a black and white version of what you see on the Predator movies. I adjusted my range and zoomed in a little. I remember jolting a little when I saw that it wasn't really a bear, but a man, because he was so low and hunched over that I thought it was a young bear that I was looking at. I thought to myself, is that the game warden? But then checked, thinking it couldn't be. I would have seen headlights coming up the road from where I was perched. And also, I thought, where could he have walked from? I was about 30 miles from anything that could be considered public. I was about to call out when I adjusted my sights and noticed that the man was naked. No shoes, no pants or anything. I remember being disturbed by his movements, like he was a squirrel or something, twitchy and grabbing at the foliage, sniffing around and palming the tree. I noticed that it appeared that that man was sniffing and moving around the tree that I had been leaning against earlier. That thought terrified me. It was like, could he smell me? Then he did something I still have nightmares about today. He squatted and placed his hands in the dirt between his feet and stared straight up like a dog mid-howl. And then I heard it. A voice coming from that direction. A very completely or compelling female voice. "Help! I'm lost!" There was a long pause, but neither of us moved a muscle. The center of my sights was trained at the dirt in front of his feet. I couldn't bring myself to aim directly at another person. It went against everything I'd been taught about firearms. I asked myself, where or was this person lost? Was this a guy that had just gone crazy while they're out here? Why was his voice so feminine? "Help! Please! I can't walk!" the voice called out. That's when I called bullshit. Not only could he walk when I first saw him, he was traversing the land with ease for a naked person. So good that I mistook him for a bear. I knew then that this whole thing was a bloody trap, and that the guy was trying to lure me in with this whole damsel in distress routine. Luckily, the lack of activity before had caused me to pack up most of my gear. I think I may have left most of it behind had I not. But at that point, I really didn't give a crap. I took my eyes off him for a moment to get my pack. As I got it on, I buckled it to my chest with its strap and then scrambled for my rifle. To my horror, he was in the same position, but his face was staring in my direction, and I swear I saw him smile. The thermal scope has an effect that makes animals' eyes appear white. How the hell had he heard me get up and put my gear on? He must have easily been 150 yards away. I screamed, "Just leave me alone," into the direction I saw him. He stood upright, and then it hit me how tall and skinny he was. He was easily 6 feet tall and very lean. He took a couple of long strides in my direction, and I instantly sent a round sailing above his head into the tree line. He was freaky as hell, but he hadn't really threatened me. What would I tell the cops? I was unwilling and unready to shoot someone. This guy, he stopped dead in his tracks and hunched down on all fours again. I yelled out, "The next one will get you. Go away." He stayed on all fours, and this time I had my sights trained on the center of him. His eyes were just above the grass, like a large cat or something. I was trying to stop my trembling, and I knew that my voice had cracked a little in the last warning. I was terrified. The standoff only lasted a minute or two, maybe less, but it felt like it went on forever. In an instant, he bolted left towards the tree line, opposite the road. I remember thinking to myself, so much for him not being able to walk. I could barely keep my scope on him. He was moving so fast. He disappeared into the bush, and I sent another bullet sailing high in his direction. I racked another round and tried to pocket the mag and swap it for a fresh one, but I dropped it, and I didn't bother even trying to look for it. I knew I wasn't far from my truck, and I just wanted to get out of there. I could hear him in the distance yelling in this weird sound that could have been a laugh or a cry. I scrambled up the trail and arrived at my truck, breathless. I tossed my gear into the cab, but kept the rifle in the passenger seat and sped off. For the longest time, I said that story from the perspective of having spotted some deranged crackhead that had been living off the land like some sort of caveman. I reported the ordeal to the Fish and Game organization, but all they did was scold me for hunting at night alone. They never provided me with an update. It wasn't until I told the story at a camping trip that my nephew told me about wendigos, rakes, and skinwalkers. My story scared the piss out of him, as the spot we were camping was technically in the same forest, just about 15 miles east of where we were. He was so spooked that his mum, my cousin, had to take him home, and man, she was really pissed. I had gone down a rabbit hole with these sort of stories. I'm not saying that what I saw was definitely a wendigo or a skinwalker. All I'm saying is that if such a thing does exist, I may have dodged quite the bullet that night. Or it was just a tweaker being some sort of Donny Thornberry in the middle of the night. Either way, I thought I'd share it. Edit. Believe it or not. Believe what you like. I don't care. These events are as I recall them. And no, I am not an author. So my stepsons are 7 and 10. They play with 5 other boys in the area in which we live, which are all around a similar age to them, and they all go to the same school in our neighborhood. Now, there is a police station in our neighborhood, and we live in a city that is quite large, but we do feel quite safe here, and we have almost zero crime around where we live. So when they go out to the park to play with friends, my husband and I agree it's okay without much in the way of an issue. We know that they'll be gone for hours, going from house to house, swimming, jumping, or trampolining, scootering, etc. Sometimes they're even at my house playing with our pool. It's a good system. We have a text group where I and the other parents communicate, so we have a very safe system. However, our state has been known for human trafficking because we are rather close to the border. It's really just something to worry about. So, the other day I brought my two boys one of the orange whistles that you use if you're being attacked. I tied each of their whistles to their bag and got them to practice blowing it at home so that they knew what to do and how loud it really was if they went to use it. I did make sure to mention to them only to use it in emergency situations. I then gave a little recap as to what an emergency situation is. Today, on break from school, the kids came to me and asked if they could do a lemonade stand. Something in my gut told me to say no, that it's not a good idea, even though they had their own little garage sale around Christmas to make money to buy gifts for the neighbors. And, whilst I thought that was cute, and they actually got a ton of donations, it didn't put anything at ease with this gut feeling. As my oldest stepson was making his signs, I reminded him about interacting with strangers and that he needs to watch the border, and so he asked me if he should bring his whistle. Without a second thought, I told him yes, that it was a great idea, and I took it off his backpack and put it around his neck. I then told him that I'm going to leave the window open, so if he felt scared at all or if something happened, that he was to blow the whistle and that he should do so like there was no tomorrow, and that I would run outside. An hour or so goes by and I'm deep into a documentary when I hear that bloody whistle going off and my stomach drops. I dash outside to see a flashy red car, like a Charger, I believe. But in all fairness, I was looking and running, so I didn't really get a good look at the vehicle. Once I finally did catch up to them and see them, I saw a man getting into the car. And my son, my oldest, comes up to me and he basically starts talking to me about how the man got out of the car and walked up to them, started asking them creepy questions like what age they were, and directly to my youngest son, asking him to get into the car. I literally told my older son earlier, do not get into or go near anyone's cars, so he didn't feel safe, so he started blowing the whistle. He blew it as hard as he could. After the whole ordeal, we ended up getting the police involved. My son told them that the car was known as a Demon, which I believe is a Dodge Charger, that it was red. When I was explaining things to the detectives, I explained to them that I had gotten a good look at the guy, gave a description, but I had to confirm that unfortunately I hadn't received or read the license plate. I told them that as he was getting into the car, and I was making sure that all the kids were accounted for, I pounded on his hood and started asking him why he would ever invite children into his car. Just as I hit the final time, he reversed and drove away. In all fairness, I wasn't thinking very clearly and I was in a bit of a panic, so I hope you understand it wasn't easy for me to think about going for his plates. I do, however, have to admit that it was right there. I was right in front of it, so I am a little bit mad at myself for not picking it up. But the kids were all talking, and I just wanted to protect them. I went into protective mode. I called the police. I did everything I needed to do. The police searched the entire neighborhood, and with the evidence given to them, they were looking for at least something. They put an alert out. They did all the things that they could. So at least there's that. But anyway, I'm so thankful for the $10 whistle that I ordered from Amazon. Sometimes you just know when stuff is about to go down. I'm still so shaken about it, and all of the kids and parents are super concerned, thinking that we may have something going on in the community. We've posted as much information as we can to the community websites and put things of the encounter on flyers just to get everyone's awareness up. We don't know for certain if that guy was up to no good. If he wasn't, though, I can't understand why he would leave so suddenly. I don't know. My view on safety has changed, been wrecked. This town, this neighborhood, it doesn't feel the same anymore. But everyone, please make sure your kids have a plan for emergencies. They have intuitions just like we do. They can see things when things are explained to them, and you shouldn't ignore teaching them things, especially when it comes to this sort of protection. Okay, everyone, first of all, I have to say, just as a general warning, nothing too bad happens in this story, but it is enough to make some people uncomfortable. So please, take caution while listening to this. Anyway, I was 15 and had just transferred into a new school. I made a friend immediately, and after a few weeks I asked my mum, and she agreed to let me spend the night at her place. I'm not going to give my friend's real name here, so let's just call her Chelsea. Anyway, I got to Chelsea's place and it's all fun and games. I met her mum, who I absolutely adore, and even managed to make a few jokes with both of her parents, even though her dad seemed a little more partial to grunting. At around 10, my friend and I both got sleepy, and since I have a horrible memory, I didn't remember to bring something to sleep with, so I had to borrow a shirt from Kelsey. The shirt was quite large, and it went down to my knees. We also slept together in the same bed. I know, probably not the best idea to be wearing just a shirt with undies and stuff, of course, to a sleepover, but I trusted my friend and she was wearing something similar. We both passed out, and I woke up sometime later because I could feel the blanket moving. I turned my head and saw a shadowy figure. I could just barely make out that it was her father. He stepped back from the bed and dropped the blanket. I blinked in his direction like a couple of times and then instantly fell back asleep again. Dumb, I know, but I was dead tired and too sleepy to be properly alarmed. I felt the same thing after I fell asleep again, and this time I didn't move around too much as I looked and verified, yes, that it was my friend's father, and that he was lifting the blankets off the side that I was sleeping on. My thighs were exposed because the shirt had ridden up while I was sleeping in it, so I sat up, scaring him away from the blanket again. Yeah, it did take it happening twice, but I finally caught on to what was going on, and to say that I was scared was a bloody understatement. I had a lot of stuff going on through my mind of the potential horrible ways that could have ended. I made sure that the blanket was around my legs and still acted sleepy because I didn't want him to know how aware I was. He moved away from the foot of the bed and just stood by the TV, telling me some BS story that he was just there to turn it down or whatever. I just went with it. He stood there for like 3 more minutes, just looking back at me to see if I would lie down again. Let's be fair, if I was even thinking about it, the fact that he was waiting on it would have stopped me. Thankfully, he left the room and I grabbed my phone and tried my hardest to call my parents. They didn't answer because it was like 3 a.m. As I was trying to reach them though, I noticed he had never really left the hallway bathroom space in front of Kelsey's door. He was still waiting for me to fall back asleep, and as such, poked his head into the room every few minutes. At this point, I felt sick. I was the most terrified I'd ever been in my life because I suddenly realized that we were the only two awake in the house. I went on sham chat just to contact people and not feel so isolated. I could have woke up Chelsea, but I didn't. I was too scared and I didn't want to lose my first friend, so I didn't bother to wake her up. I just stayed on my phone all night until she woke up, and I made her come with me to the bathroom because I was nervous. If you're curious, I did eventually tell her what happened. She begged me to tell her mum, and I did, even though I didn't want to. She then came home with me and refused to leave until I told my mum. Together they managed to get him out of the house, and Kelsey is still one of my closest friends to this day. And I'm immensely grateful for the fact that I'm a light sleeper. The only thing that even woke me up in these two situations was the fact that I am a light sleeper, that I could feel the blanket being lifted. It was such a small thing, but I am just so lucky that it was enough to wake me up. He could have done worse. A lot worse than just look if it wasn't for that.